Let everybody do what they want.
If I could forgive Bernard Ford, then I could forgive Bob Morris too. And today, on this day, I no more have anything in my heart for what he did.
The education system has to be very fluid and dynamic because we're living in very different and changing times.
Treating all your citizens equally, all your citizens fairly, recognizing each group, not discriminating against one or the other.
Hello, everyone, and we welcome you to this week's edition of the Bub Report. We're happy that you can join us for yet another Sunday. And if it's Sunday, it is the Bub Report. We thank you for joining us. And wherever you're joining us, let us know. Just add that to the chat. And as you're coming into the room, do us a favor by liking, and sharing, because sharing is caring. And the sharing of knowledge is also caring. So if you can do us a favor by making sure that as you're coming into the room, just like and share this week's program. We do want to thank you all for joining us. We know that it's a very busy carnival build-up season in Grenada, and folks are ready and excited for all of the great things that Carnival has in store for us. I'm also looking forward to visiting Grenada for Carnival and to be participating in a number of the National Spice Mass events. And I'm also looking forward to playing Mass, because that's a fun fact about me. I do play Mass, not so much jab. The folks might be surprised by that, but I do play pretty Mass. I'm in my costume on Carnival Tuesday. Back on Carnival, well, Carnival Monday now, they have a thing called Monday Wear, which again, growing up in the 90s and in the early 2000s, it was all about pageant. And I really do miss the pageant days because, again, you had the opportunity to parade in your costume on both days. And I think we really need to return to the pageant days of Carnival because I really enjoyed that growing up as a child. So folks, what we want to do is to get straight into this week's editorial, because we do have a very packed show for you today as well. And we want to get on with it because, again, we know that it's also semifinal Sunday. It's also semifinal Sunday in Grenada. And a number of new faces will be gracing the stage for the Calypso semifinal. And of course, we also had over the weekend both the Groovy and the Soca semifinals. I know that the folks in St. Patrick's, I know that my friend Trisha is listening, and she's very excited with the star-studded cast of artists who will be gracing the stage for the Soca Monarch this year. It will be a very interesting one indeed, a very competitive one, but my bets are on St. David. My bets are on Muddy from St. David for that crown, but we will see how that goes. So folks, here goes the editorial. Now, the Caribbean is increasingly being promoted as the next frontier for data centers, with promises of economic growth, digital innovation, and new investment. But before the region embraces this vision, a cautionary conversation is needed. Data centers depend on reliable electricity. It also relies on reliant communications networks. Have we seen what happens when the internet goes down in Grenada? I'm not going to reference any of the companies' names, but we have those issues not only in Grenada, but across the Caribbean, as well as continuous operations. Yet the Caribbean faces significant vulnerabilities. Let's start with hurricanes. What about in some islands of fragile power grids? What about high energy costs? Who are these data centers going to pass on those energy costs to? Here in the United States, in some jurisdictions, those energy costs are shared by the consumers who live next to those data centers. and they have seen explosions in their electricity bills. You think your electricity bills are high now? Then wait until a data center pops up in your community. And there are other growing climate risks. A single major storm can disrupt not only physical infrastructure, but also the transportation, communications, and utility systems on which these data systems depend. There is another concern that receives far less attention, and that is water. Many data centers require enormous quantities of fresh water for cooling. At the very moment, investors are proposing water-intensive facilities. Much of the Caribbean is already grappling with chronic water stress. Across the region, rivers are shrinking, watersheds are dying and are under pressure. Rainfall patterns are becoming less predictable, and communities are experiencing longer and more frequent periods of drought. For many islands, securing a reliable supply of fresh water is already a challenge for households, for agriculture, and for tourism. And then we want to have data centers in our backyards. Folks, the question is simple. Should scarce freshwater resources be diverted to support large-scale data centers that are just not sustainable for the planet, when communities themselves are facing increasing uncertainty about the future of water and water availability? This, folks, is not an argument against digital transformation in the Caribbean. I'm absolutely certain the Caribbean can find ways of really delving into digital transformation without wanting to chase the next shiny object. We've chased the shiny object of CBI, some might argue, and now we're chasing the shiny object of a data center. Folks, the Caribbean deserves a place in the global digital economy, but data centers are not a silver bullet. Governments and investors must carefully weigh their demands on energy and water resources against the realities of a region already confronting climate change challenges, extended droughts, and environmental stress. In the race to build a digital future, enthusiasm must be matched by realism. Otherwise, the Caribbean risks investing in infrastructure that could deepen existing vulnerabilities rather than strengthen resilience. Folks, this is the Bub Report. Do stay with us as we get into the first segment of the program. And please remember to like and share this week's program.
We seek the truth.
Would you be handing your resignation to the Minister of Culture tomorrow, sir?
No, I will not.
Leader of the opposition, you have accused your government, sir, of using the Grenada Development Bank to facilitate the financing of personal loans for certain government ministers.
The other side is in no position to talk about those issues, and I will leave it there.
We discover new perspectives.
You know his leadership style. And so many are saying, why are you coming now to talk about those issues?
Now is the time to speak. You have the right to decide who will take over.
And you met with Dr. Mitchell, and perhaps you might want to confirm what that meeting was about in your response. But
Dr. Mitchell, like myself, are Grenadians.
We ask the right questions.
Why was there no report on the work done of the commission? And how is this new committee different from the commission that was initially established back in 2022? So who are these elements that are using you?
I'm disappointed in my political leader.
And why is that animating those political conversations now?
This is a very interesting question.
The Bub Reports with Dr. Kellon Bub. Thought-provoking, truthful, unbiased, and truly original reporting.
Viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bub Report. Now, the government of Grenada announced last week a targeted cost of living assistance program designed to cushion households, businesses, and the national economy against rising global food and energy prices. The comprehensive relief package directly addresses the ongoing inflationary pressures as well as the ongoing volatile economic environment with which the world finds itself, including elevated fuel tariffs, inflated shipping costs, and global supply disruptions exacerbated by ongoing geopolitical conflicts, an unprovoked geopolitical conflict in the Middle East, not started by Iran, FYI. Speaking on the initiative, Minister of Finance, the Honorable Dennis Cornwall in Grenada said, quote, "This is not inflation created in Grenada. It is imported inflation. While we cannot control international markets, we can act responsibly to help reduce the impact on our people," unquote. Expected to directly benefit more than 38,000 households in Grenada, the program is intended to provide economic relief while also safeguarding the government's commitments to long-term fiscal stability. Now, the overall fiscal impact of this initiative is expected to be at approximately 18 million EC dollars. And we will make sense of those numbers with our next guest. Now, in addition to maintaining existing price ceilings on gas, diesel, kerosene, and LPG cylinders through December 2026, key measures would include VAT relief on electricity, 100% removal of VAT on electricity for all consumer categories from August to December 2026, an energy import tax waiver, removal of the customs service charge on diesel imported for electricity generation, thereby decreasing the consumer cost of electricity. Another measure is the direct consumer subsidy, an increase of the monthly electricity subsidy from 10 EC dollars to 50 EC dollars, alongside an expansion of the eligibility threshold from 99 kilowatts hour to 200 kilowatts per month. And finally, a retail tax relief, 2 VAT-free shopping days per month, covering groceries, school supplies, hardware, and appliances. Now, that measure was implemented in St. Vincent and the Grenadines by the Godwin Friday administration upon their election to office. Now, those measures in Grenada will go from August to October 2026. And we had a conversation with the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance in Grenada, Mr. Mike Sylvester, who was able to break down the impacts and implications of these new cost of living relief measures for the citizens in Grenada. Permanent Secretary Mike Sylvester, welcome, sir, to this week's edition of the Bob Report.
Welcome, Dr. Bob. And of course, it's a pleasure to be here once again to share information on this important program.
Yes, sir. So let us begin by talking about some of those measures. I think the consumer rate in Grenada would probably be very excited by the VAT on electricity. Those measures, I think, is something that people will be excited about. But let's talk first and foremost about the rationale for these new cost of living measures.
Right. Well, thank you very much again. And as I said, good day to all your listeners, and viewers. And the rationale for the measures, of course, I want to say that it is both timely and important. You would, of course, realize and understand that we are living in a very volatile economic period, all right, in the world. In February of this year, for example, there was the start of a war in the Middle East, and that has impacted seriously the cost of fuel and shipping arrangements and so on and so forth, which is in a sense driving up inflation. Yeah. So that has happened. The government since that period has basically instructed the Ministry of Finance to monitor the situation very closely and to make recommendations to the cabinet as necessary. And so we at the Ministry of Finance, we have been monitoring those developments and in terms of how they impact our electricity, how they impact our food, and how they impact our fuel prices and so on. You would recall earlier, for example, the cap on fuel, right? So the cap on gasoline, diesel, and
that was back in 2022.
No, that came in effect in April. At 17.
Oh, in April of this year. Yes. I was going back to that original cap.
The original cap, right? So that was an immediate measure that the government took to be able to deal with the issue of rising prices at the pump, right? I mean, we're talking about the prices rising as far as 18 $19 in some respects. And they basically, the cap, in a sense, help to cushion the price at the pump. Because if you understand how the build-up is done to get the price at the pump, it starts with the landed cost the landed cost of fuel, and then you add the petrol tax, you add the margin or guaranteed margin to the supplier, so that's the Sol and Rubis, and then you add the guaranteed margin to the gas stations, and then you get the price at the pump. So if there is an increase in the CIF value, the landed value, what the government has been doing is basically taking less on the petrol tax, which is $3.50. But as you recall, that was also reduced some time back from $5.50. So that was the first measure that actually came into effect. At a later stage, the government also capped the price of the 100-pound cylinder, because that again started rising exponentially and so on. So it was capped at $350 for the 100-pound cylinder. So those are measures that were taken almost immediately. We continue to monitor the situation. And then recently, of course, with the escalation of war in the Middle East and so on, the policymakers have come back to us and say, listen, we need to move on this. What are your recommendations and so on? So we took a set of measures to the cabinet after our careful deliberation. As we've been working at this for quite some time in terms of what are the proposed measures that we can put forward. And so the cabinet approved a policy of measures, which was announced by the minister last Wednesday. And that's where we are in terms of the rationale. So the rationale is really to cushion the impact of elevated electricity, food, and fuel price on consumers in Grenada. So it's a cost of living impact, but there is also a business continued impact, because it's intended to address and support business activity and so on in this particular period. Because of course, the impact is affecting not just household, but also affecting business consumers and so on.
In making a determination for this, and again, in the press conference, the minister did reference the fiscal space that the country is currently in. But let us talk about in your decision to determine what items would get relief. For example, the energy import tax waiver, you have that. You also have the VAT relief on electricity. Again, those are measures that, again, causes government to not collect revenue on certain services. So can you talk about, in terms of the calculation that you've made, that also it was done in such a way that it does not impact the actual fiscal purse and your revenue collection abilities?
Well, it does, and it does quite significantly. But let me just talk through how we arrive at the measure. So you have three buckets, as I said. So the government looked at electricity, looked at food, and then of course fuel. Yeah. So on the electricity side, that is impacted significantly through the fuel surcharge. So if you look at your electricity bill, for example, you will see a couple items there. So you have the fuel surcharge, you have the non-fuel surcharge, of course, you have the value-added tax, and then you have some other items on the bill, right?
Yeah.
Now the fuel surcharge is a direct pass-through. So whatever the price of the international price at the pump is, that basically goes into your light bill. The Grenada has on their site, for example, you will see that they have a surcharge. I think it has jumped in recent times from 51 cents to almost 70 something cents, right? And that is because of the jump in the fuel price, or the price of oil, right? So, and then of course you have the non-fuel charge, which basically is what Grenada used to cover the administrative costs and so on, the insurance, the salaries, and so on and so on, right? And that's how you get to the charge that Grenada applies to your consumption. Yeah. So that is basically what we are faced with. And so the government has to then decide, how do I treat with the reducing the cost of electricity for the consumers, and the consumers in particular households, because of course Grenada has several categories of consumers. You have commercial, you have industrial, and so the idea was to basically support the most vulnerable categories, and then of course to support business continuity. So on the electricity consumption, there on subsidy, there are three measures, right? The first one has to do with the enhanced electricity subsidy. And you may recall that back in 2022, the government introduced a $10 subsidy on electricity bills. So persons who are consuming up to 99 kilowatt hour, when you look at the bill, you will see a $10 direct benefit or discount, if you want to call it that. So what government has done is looked at that, at that time, the 99 kilowatt hour benefited around 22,000 households in Grenada. So we Grenlec has about 49,000 households that are attached to their grid. So that those are the number of persons who are using households that are using electricity, which is basically almost 100%, or 99 point whatever percent of the population. All right. So what government has done is say, okay, we are going to increase that from $10 to $50. So that's a significant increase if you look at it on the surface, and also to increase the kilowatt hour from 99 kilowatt hour to 200 kilowatt hour. Right. And so that has moved the number of households from 22,000 to almost 39,000 people or households. Yeah. So you're talking about almost 78% of the household will benefit from the $50 on their bill, right? And so if you look at it within the context of that, is quite significant. Now, that is the first measure under that category. Under that category as well, government has removed the value-added tax that is applicable to all categories of consumers under that category, right? So when you look at that, you're talking about the not just the 49, but the almost 57,000 consumers that Grenlec has. They will benefit from this, right? The VAT rate on electricity consumption, as you know, is 7.5%. That was reduced from 15% some time back, right? To also address cost of living pressures, and now the government has removed that temporarily for August to December, right? The estimated cost of that is $3 million. And let me just go back to the electricity subsidy. The estimated cost of that is $9.6 million, right? And then, of course, the removal of the CSC, that's the 100% removal of the custom service charge on the imported diesel for electricity generation, right? So that is a charge that is applied now. So Grenlec pays that to the government. So government has basically removing that, and the estimated cost of that is $3.2 million. So government is actually giving up in a sense, by way of taxes and so on, $6.8 million. But in terms of direct payment to Grenlec to help reduce the impact on consumers' bill, you having basically a direct subvention to Grenlec of $9.6 million. So that is the fiscal impact in that context under that specific intervention.
But in terms of, especially at this time of the fiscal year, we are, I suppose one might say, in the middle of the budgetary cycle. What will that be doing for your estimated revenue collection as prescribed in the last estimates of revenue and expenditure? And are there areas, are there expenditure items, are there capital items, or are there line items in the budget that that may be directly impacted?
Right. So obviously it has two impacts. So the first impact is it will reduce our revenue intake, because it's a revenue foregone. The VAT will be a revenue foregone. The custom service charge will be a revenue foregone. The electricity subsidy is a direct payment by the government, so it's really an expenditure. So you have an impact on both sides of the coin. All right. So that is the first point. In terms of how it affects more broadly the government's ability to carry out expenditure and so on. The government did indicate, for instance, at the time of the budget presentation, that it's going to have a deficit budget based on the fact that we were responding to burial, right? And so because of that, the government presented a deficit budget, and did indicate at that time that the budget will be financed from domestic and external sources, as well as a drawdown of deposits from the consolidated fund. So what this really means is that what government will have to do is to draw down more. So if we initially said we're going to draw down $10, it means that government have to draw down say $15 to be able to then treat with that particular matter, and even more, because you're having at this point, as I said, a reduction in revenues intake based on the revenues foregone. But we have done the math, and so government is able to carry this for the rest of the year. So we are pretty confident and comfortable with that, based on our analysis and so on.
And just as a quick follow-up, in respect of, I know that, for example, the International Monetary Fund, they were able to revise growth downward, I think by 1.1%, 0.3% or thereabouts. With respect to Grenada's forecasted growth, where are we now with respect to this fiscal year?
Yeah, so
As a
that's
result
an
of all of
important
what's
question.
happening globally.
So we have just completed our medium-term fiscal framework. We have submitted the framework to the Fiscal Resilience Oversight Committee, that's the FROC, for their
Yes.
written feedback, right? Which is required by the law, the PFM Act, and the next step is basically to finalize the document, get cabinet consideration of it, and then publish that. So we are looking to publish that by the end of this month. And that will give you a complete picture in terms of what the fiscal for the period so far, our economic surveillance and what it has indicated in terms of growth and so on, and our projection for the rest of the year. So right, so based on that, we have revised downwards our projections of growth, right? So right now we are looking at 3.3%, as against what we had presented in the budget. We had presented about 4.6%, I think, in the budget. So we have revised that downwards, and we have in that document the analysis of why we arrive at that in our discussions with the private sector and so on, in terms of the impact on the various sectors and so on. So that is something that we are seeing. We have looked at our fiscal situation, and as I just indicated, based on what is happening including the impact of the COLA program, we will see a weakening, if you want to call it that, of the fiscal position relative to what we projected at the time of the budget presentation. But that being said, as I just indicated, it means that we have to then dig into our coffers to be able to meet all of government commitments for the rest of the year and going forward.
Now, Mr. Sylvester, back when I was growing up in Grenada, in my humble village of Pomrose, I remember the shops in the communities, they had the price list, right? At the bottom of it, it was saying approved by the price control officer XYZ. I don't see that anymore. Or maybe there's a digital list now, I don't know, but I do remember that vividly when I would go make groceries with my parents. Well, make message, we didn't call it groceries.
Right.
But let us talk about price enforcement. That has been a concern that has been raised, is this idea that owing to these inflationary pressures, that price gouging happens. And I know that I don't know the scope of the ministry with respect to the price enforcement officers and so on. But are the price enforcement, price control officers still present? And what is the ministry doing to ensure that retailers are adhering to what those prices are recommended according to the basket of goods and according to market forces?
Right. So I've seen you jump to the 2-day VAT free shopping day. Is that what you're talking about now?
Yes.
Right. Right. So that's another measure that the government has introduced, is a 2-day VAT free shopping day, as announced by the Minister of Finance. And I think people are very excited about this. We have also spent quite a bit of time coming up with a policy for cabinet consideration in terms of the elements of that program. Yeah. And so I'll speak to the other details, but in terms of the how we monitor the impact, I mean, if we just take a look at how VAT is implemented, now you have there are a certain number of VAT registered companies in Grenada, right? So not everybody in Grenada, or every company in Grenada is registered for VAT. Yeah, you are aware of that. So if you are a small company, you're not earning over $300,000 per annum and so on, you will not be registered for VAT. And so you not in terms of implementation of any VAT measure, you will not be part and parcel of that particular issue, right? So basically, all these VAT businesses are required to register for VAT. They have their point of sale system, right? So when you go to the supermarket, for example, and you buy some stuff, if you look at your grocery bill, you will see on your grocery bill the item, you might see a little V or a little T next to the item. You might see a Z, which stands for zero rated, or you might see an E, which stands for exempt. The V or the T stands for vatable or taxable, right? So there and then you will know which items that are that attract VAT, which items that do not attract VAT, and so on. And then you will see the application and the amount that you pay in VAT on your bill. right? So what we are asking businesses and so on to do in this program is basically to go into the system. And I mean, it might be very easy for some companies. It might be a click or two. Basically, click the items that will be now zero rated, right? That will now have a Z. So that will increase from the item that we have now, which is 20 plus items that are zero rated. That will increase say significantly, right? Based on the items that are now vatable. And then, of course, after the 2-day period, they will go back into the system and click back those items. It's basically a toggle. You know how this thing works. You go and you click.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
You toggle. Yeah.
Right.
You toggle it. Yes.
And then basically that is what people the business are expected to do. Now the consumers, you can monitor these things. You can go, for example, the day before the VAT free day, which is going to be announced in advance. Look at the items on the supermarket that you're going to purchase, and then after when you do your purchase, then you can look at your bill, and you can see the impact directly, right? That's one way. Because, for example, we are not asking businesses to go in and change the price on the shelf and so on. That is not required, right? And in any event, the item on the shelf, it already has the VAT attached to that item. So when you look at your bill compared to the item that you have, you will see the difference obvious immediately there, right? Now, it is difficult for a business to basically try to price gouge in that context. That you are looking at prices on the inventory in stock. You're not looking at the new items that are coming to the port and old stock and new stock and so on. It's basically what already on the shelf, which the business are already paid for, paid VAT for. They're now selling to you without VAT. And what it means that when they submit the return to the government have to pay the businesses and so on for the through the VAT returns for the amounts and so on. So that is how it will be in terms of the impact and how customers will be able to monitor the purchases and so on. That is one way. That being said, we are going to continue to work with the price control, the Central Statistical Office under the Ministry of Economic Development and Planning. I think a lot of people have been aware that CSO, Central Statistical Office, or the Price Control Unit of Consumer Affairs is not under Ministry of Finance. I think people.
I was always under the impression that it was on the Ministry of Finance.
That was changed.
I'm learning something today.
Back in 2022. So we
Okay.
That's not under finance, but we work closely with them, because most of our information for our macroeconomic analysis and so on would come from them, of course. Yeah. So there's a close relationship in terms of working with them and so on. So they are the ones who put out the price control, the consumer price index, and so on, and monitor the price at the in the supermarkets and would publish the CPI and so on. But we work with them. So the idea, we have already engaged them to support us in basically in the monitoring this. But you have to understand, it's not price control you're monitoring, and a lot of people don't understand price control as well, because that the other issue with price control is that the government is not controlling the price of these items. What government is controlling is the margin, right? Because that's why, so for example, when you go to the supermarket and someone say, oh well, this is price control, why it is going up? What your government can effectively control is the margin. So for example, if you have an item that it comes at $10, landing ingredient at $10, you add your markup and whatever else, and you get the price that is on the shelf, right? If the CIF goes up, even if you keep the margin constant, the price at the final price will will definitely increase still. Yeah. So what government controls is the margin. So your margin, whether it's 15%, 25%, that is what government controls. But in any ordinary item, for example, the margin could be as high as 50%, 60%. You don't know, right? And that's how government implements price control and so on. Yeah. But those are the things that we will do. Of course, we may get issues that people are not following the law, or they may slip to the crack. But we are going to monitor this very closely. And the other thing that we're going to do as well, if a business is caught cheating and so on, they will be removed from the program. So they will not be able to benefit from the ability to sell and sell cheaper and so on, and to be able to get businesses and so on. Let me also add one point, because I think there's a issue with persons who are companies who are not registered for VAT, and I heard that they probably have issues implementing this stuff. They will actually benefit, right? Because they can now buy at the VAT-free price and then pass that on to the consumers as well. So a small shop, when you go to buy, whether you buy in bulk or otherwise, you get the benefit of the VAT-free day, and then you can then basically sell that and pass it on to your consumers and so on. Yeah.
Now, I know that that CARICOM as well has been doing a lot of work with respect to this issue as well. And it was announced at the last CARICOM meeting, those cost of living measures that other countries in the region are embarking on. Let us talk about CARICOM support in all of this, especially in the context of the common external tariff.
Right. So, I mean, I think CARICOM support at this stage is more advocacy and so on. And of course, trying to support countries by way of whether it's regional coordination, improving logistics, supporting regional initiatives with respect to renewables and so on. Dealing with some of the more structural measures to help deal with the cost of fuel and food, right? Food and nutrition security, as well as reducing our vulnerability to the impact of volatile oil prices and so on. So I think in that context, you have CARICOM is doing quite a bit. No, CARICOM is not supporting this program that government is implementing in terms of any financial injection or so. This is all borne by the government, and as you can, as we just outlined, is basically the taxes, the VAT, and so on, CSC, and those items that have been impacted, as well as the government direct subvention to Grenada and others to be able to support this particular measure. But it is important that CARICOM continue their advocacy in that regard and so on, because again, if CARICOM can speak with a more larger voice to be able to help the international community to support our countries, because we bear the brunt of these impacts, even if we are not the ones that are at the forefront of some of these measures. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And finally, Permanent Secretary Sylvester, we are aware that these measures have an end date of December 2026. But the question in my mind is, what if volatility in the global market remains the same? What will be the contingency plan then? Have you thought that far ahead, sir?
We've thought far ahead. So I mean, the government is not doing this thing; is doing this thing strategically, right? I mean, so if you have a shock, right? The first thing that the government will have to assess, or government assess, is whether and to what extent this shock is a blip, is just a flash in the pan, as they say. Just something that happens now and it will go away in a short period. And so in that case, the government will allow the full pass through of this to the consumer. They will not intervene, right? If it's deemed to be a little more temporary, a little more longer term, for example, in the context of this, the government has estimated that this will happen for the rest of the year, right? Or this impact will be for the rest of the year, because we're talking about with the escalation now and price of oil starts going back up and so on. We expect higher oil prices all through the end of December, and so government has intervened. Right now, if this turns out to be a case where, and I say intervene in the first instance, so that's the language of the cabinet decision in the first instance, yeah. So there'll be a review to determine how the government goes forward on this. Of course, you have to take into account the fiscal space. You have to take into account all of these issues going forward. But if it's a long-term sustained impact, the government would have to at some point scale back on some of these measures, yeah, because it would not be able to afford, for example, the $50 continuously, if for example the measure remains sustained at over $100 a barrel, for example, right? And it means that as country, we have to accelerate our structural measures to get away from oil and so on, and get our geothermal and get our solar PV systems and so on, and battery system, and get our wind energy and whatever else. Grow more of our food, so that we don't depend so much on some of these factors, yeah. And then of course the population may have to adjust in some respect. So we always make the point, and I say, like for example, with the price of fuel being capped, why should we cap fuel for someone who wants to joyride and just drive for? I mean, I used to do that as a young boy, just drive just to feel happy, right? You just go from place to place and so on. But why should the government subsidize that, right? The government perhaps should subsidize someone trying to buy a vehicle to go to work, right? So
Right.
you could have a case where you have these measures that are being more targeted, where you say, okay, you want to joyride, you pay a little higher, and the man who want to go to work, he gets he gets a break on that particular thing. So there are ways that the government can tweak this and make it a little more targeted, so that it impact the persons who you want to impact, and of course the persons who have the ability to pay, they can be allowed to pay a little more and so on. Yeah.
Very well. Mr. Sylvester, is there anything else in this conversation that we did not touch on that you want our viewers and listeners to be aware of? I know that you mentioned joyriding. We're going into a season of joy with Carnival now, so I hope that, people at least, and before, after Carnival ends, it will be back to school. So I think the VAT-free shopping days would come in handy
Right.
for the folks, especially the
Right.
parents. Parents, I know that, you all love the costumes and whatnot, but the kids need the books.
Yes. So I want to expand a little bit on the VAT free shopping day. I mean, it's
Yes,
very,
yes.
very,
How
very,
would it be
very, very
announced?
important.
Yes,
So
yes.
we are going to issue some. We're doing some public information now, but the idea is by the 14th of before the 14th of August, the government will issue the list of VAT companies that will participate in the program, right? So it's all companies, all VAT registered companies, but of course you have to be tax compliant because we want to be able to enforce that as well. So that will be published. The minister will also publish the days, the VAT free days. We're going to publish for August, and then we're going to publish for September and October as well. We are still sort of working through September and October, and for the very reason that we want to make sure that you get the consumers get the bang for the buck. So we have said, for example, a 2-day period. So and we are trying to then decide which are the best 2 days, right? You want to of course implement when people have people have money. One, you want to also ensure that the business community is able to go in and toggle their system, and then be able to toggle back, after the 2 days. And so we decided that we're going to be implementing on a weekend, on a Friday, and a Saturday, and then on Sunday they will use that period to sort of toggle back. Most companies are closed on a Sunday and so on, and by Monday they should be back on and ready to roll in the at the 15% and so on again. So that is important. We wanted to put in a day where people have the ability to go out and shop. If you put it on a work day, then it means that most people are in work and so on. They can't go out and shop and so on. So again, the 2-day period was important in that particular regard. So a lot of thought has gone into this, and we have of course engaged the private sector and so on, and they've given their views and their feedback and so on. And so that's where we are in terms of the VAT-free day. The list of items, of course, you mentioned school books, food, and so on. And there are some items that are on the negative list, so that would not be things. So alcohol, sin goods, as you call them, vehicle, luxury goods, jewelry, and so on. Those will be out. But for the most part, and services, but for the most part, your basic food that are not already on exempt or zero rated, and then of course household appliances, clothes, and school books, and also building materials. That's important. And in that as well, you have to complete the transaction on that particular day, because in another case, or 2 days, sorry, in another case where you do a higher purchase and you pay now, and then after you pay over a period of time, you have to be completed on a day and delivered on that same day. We will make exceptions for some of the bulky items like the building materials and so on. You get a period for the company to deliver for you. But the idea is that all the transactions are completed on those 2 days, and then of course the company will then, when they file their return, they will submit their VAT returns to the government, and of course government will continue to make refunds to these businesses as applicable, and so on, within the context of the VAT Act. In August, I think we said the 28th and the 29th. Those days, and then of course we will advise in all the days in September and October. Whether we do it before we see how the feedback on the August month, or we probably do it, but we'll do it in advance, long in advance, so the business committee they will have the time to come in and do the stuff, and of course people have the time to prepare to be able to then participate and take full charge of this important measure the government is implementing.
Mr. Sylvester, thank you so much for appearing on the Bob Report this
Thank
week,
you,
sir.
and I'm happy to be able to share on this important program, because I think, as I said, it's timely and it's important, and we are in a difficult economic period, and the government, I think, has responded, and persons should take advantage of this, by way of ensuring that they benefit, and the businesses should work with us as well to ensure that the benefit reaches the consumers. Thank you. Bye bye.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I don't know if you celebrate Carnival, sir, but if you do, happy Carnival to you in advance.
Same to same to you. Same to you.
Yes.
Thanks. Have a good one. All right. Bye bye.
Absolutely, sir. Viewers and listeners, the permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance, he was able to join the Bub Report this week to really expand on government's announcement last week with respect to a cost of living relief measures that they have implemented. And some of those measures, again, to recap, VAT relief on electricity, 100% removal of VAT on electricity for all consumer categories from August to December. The energy import tax waiver, removal of the customs service charge on diesel imported for electricity generation, thereby decreasing the consumer cost of electricity. Also, direct customer subsidies, increase of the monthly electricity subsidy from $10 to $50, alongside an expansion of the eligibility threshold from 99 kilowatts per hour to 200 kilowatts per month, per month. And then you have the retail tax relief, 2 VAT-free shopping days. The ministry, by way of the permanent secretary, just now indicated that they will be announcing what those days are after consultation with the tax compliant businesses in Grenada who are going to be part of that VAT-free shopping day program. It will be 2 VAT-free shopping days per month, and those items would cover groceries, school supplies, hardware, and appliances, not luxury items.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Of course, the Bub Report is where we examine stories that matter, we ask difficult questions, and advocate for accountability when lives are at stake. Now today, we turn our attention to the heartbreaking MV Barima tragedy in Guyana, a disaster that has shaken the nation and sparked serious concerns about maritime safety, regulatory oversight, and public accountability. Reports indicate that the vessel capsized while traveling from Georgetown to Port Kaituma, leaving dozens dead and many others missing or unaccounted for. Investigations have also raised troubling questions about passenger manifests, crew conduct, enforcement procedures, and whether existing safeguards were adequate to protect those on board. As families mourn and as a country mourns, and as rescue and recovery efforts continue, the focus here on today's program would extend beyond the immediate tragedy. On this edition of the program, we will ask, were safety regulations properly enforced? Were oversight agencies given the resources and authority needed to prevent such a catastrophe? And what reforms are necessary to ensure that no community has to endure a similar loss again? Reports of discrepancies in passenger records and concerns about compliance with operational standards have intensified calls for a thorough and transparent investigation that the government has promised to embark upon. Now, on this episode of the program, we explore the facts that have emerged, the systemic challenges of facing maritime transport in Guyana, and the broader lessons about leadership, accountability, and public safety. And here to make sense of this tragedy in Guyana is the Honorable Amanza Walton, who appeared on the Bub Report in the past. And Ms. Walton, we're here not talking about anything jovial. This is a very somber and tragic time for Guyana. So first and foremost, we want to extend our deepest condolences to you and to the people of Guyana.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. This is a very tough time for us here, for our people. There is no one that you can talk to that is not touched by this tragedy. They either know someone directly or they work with someone who has a relative. Guyana has a small population, so you can imagine that every other Guyanese knows somebody who has been affected personally by this. And so it is a time of just immense grief. At the personal level, I've been going on autopilot, as it were, since Sunday when this happened.
Yeah.
And so we thank you for your condolences, and we need certainly the prayers and positive thoughts of our Caribbean brothers and sisters at this time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, MP Walton, in our background research for this week's edition of the program, we found out through somebody who's watching the show, I'm not going to reference his name, but he indicated that you have experience in maritime law and serving in the maritime sector as well, and your background as a maritime attorney. So that's where we want to start with this conversation. Let us talk about, in looking at this tragedy, in looking at what occurred, as first and foremost a maritime attorney and someone who served at the regulatory maritime level, what do you see big picture?
Systemic failure. That's it. All systems have failed. The regulator has failed. The Transport and Harbors Department has failed. The government has failed. These people were not, aboard the MV Barima because it was, their first choice. They were systemically forced to use an 87-year-old vessel. And, when this tragedy happened, on the first day, on Sunday, I said to people, because I was asked about how I felt about the government and enough. And I said, look, we're not going to do that today. Today, we're going to search for survivors. We're going to help the family to begin to face this tragedy. And then we will talk about accountability as the days go on. And as the days have gone on, it has become apparent that our system failed at every level, from the president to the minister to the agencies. And as is the case when systems fail because of incompetence, because of corruption and otherwise, it is usually the poor and ordinary citizen that faces the brunt of it and that pay the consequences. And sometimes those consequences extend to their lives. And this is what has happened here.
Mm-hmm. Let us talk about the governance issues in the maritime sector. I've been paying attention to a lot of the public pronouncements by the government by way of their daily press conferences that they've been having. I've also listened to the leader of the opposition in Guyana, as well as speaking to journalists on the ground in Georgetown. And one of the issues that that they've raised is just the issues of governance in the maritime sector in Guyana, especially with respect to oversight or lack thereof, the modernization of the maritime, especially public maritime transport fleet, as well as investment or lack thereof in the maritime sector, especially as a public service here. So let us speak to, at least if we can get some background as to those challenges, because one may argue that, while we have this tragedy now, perhaps all of these variables were just an accident waiting to happen.
There were an accident waiting to happen, and that has tragically happened. Look, the maritime sector in Guyana has been characterized by very poor governance practices. I will say that there have been efforts over the years to bring Guyana into line, as it were, with international requirements. What do I mean? Historically, one government entity both provided transport and harbor services as well as regulated. With the passage of the Guyana Shipping Act, the regulatory authority was created, but we have not since 1998 taken necessary steps to perfect that separation. And so we continue to be challenged even in terms of our regulatory arrangements. Having said that, since Guyana has found oil, we are an economy that stands at a budget of 1.558 trillion, I think was our last budget, the largest ever, of course, in our history. And so our country is at a point where we have commanded resources that we have never commanded before. Now, for governance context, and I want people to understand, because locally what you're beginning to see is the blame game being played. The government that is led by President Irfan Ali was in power in Guyana from 1992 all the way up to 2015. There was an interregnum of about 3 years with the APN UAFC government. And then the PPPC administration returned to government in 2020. So that has to be clearly understood. The second thing that I want us to appreciate is that this is a government ferry. It's not a private service. This is a service provided by the government of Guyana for the Northwest region, as we call it, which is a predominantly indigenous region that is heavily dependent on gold mining, etc. So over the years, what you've seen is a lack of, in my view, political will to bring the administrative and regulatory arrangements to the level that a growing economy requires. What you're seeing, and this MV Barima tragedy is our clearest example yet of institutions not keeping a pace with the fastest growing economy in the world. And it is my considered opinion that this undermining of our institutions is being done deliberately. What do I mean by that? Now, the government of Guyana will tell you that they have gone out and they have spent exorbitant amounts of money on infrastructure, on new vessels, etc. This is my second tenure in the National Assembly. Throughout the first tenure, I expressed time and time again that the way we are planning our public sector investments and the public sector investment program is considerably too large for the capacity that we have. When I made this point, a lot of people thought I was being extraneous, etc. But I will tell you that Guyana has an efficiency gap of 46%, which means that for every dollar we spend on infrastructure, 46% of it is wasted. Why is that important to this instant case? Because we approved in the National Assembly, I'm to try to find the exact figures. The government of Guyana came and got money to procure a vessel, the MV Malaysia, that was built in India, I believe it was, at the cost of US $12.7 million. That vessel is in Guyana, but unable to replace the MV, the Barima, because the wharf infrastructure cannot accommodate it. Because in planning the rehabilitation of the wharves in Region 1, the Port Kaituma Wharf, etc., there was massive, massive. There were massive defects found by the company that was brought in after the procurement cycle failed twice. So what you have really is a tragedy of incompetence, because you're buying and procuring vessels that are unsuited for the types of wars in existence. You're not able to complete the wars in time because you keep awarding contracts to contractors without the capacity to execute these works, but that are cronies of the government. And so when you do that, this is the tragedy that occurs. So you have new vessels, you have a stalled port infrastructure because the contractors that they awarded the contracts to could not finish them in time. And now we have over 150 Guyanese lives that we have just lost. And so this is what is incensing about this entire thing, because you have a government that likes to govern by headlines, and they announce this and they announce that. And from the outside, it looks as though Guyana is doing well and we're swimming in money. But the MV Barima shows very clearly the level of incompetence that we are saddled with. The other problem that you have, Dr. Bob, is an issue of corruption. The PPPC administration is a corrupt government, and they foster the culture of corruption, because everybody who knows anything about those boats know that you could go there and you could pass money and you can get extra cargo put on. The captains themselves have complained that if they refuse to put cargo on, particularly for government supporters, they get a call from somebody at Freedom House, that is the PPP headquarters, to say, look, that cargo has to go. It is alleged right now that the Minister Edgil had cargo equipment, ATVs, etc., for personal business that was being transported to Region 1. And so we have no confidence that this government will give us an independent, impartial investigation about anything.
If I may follow up on that, so the regulatory structure for maritime affairs in Ghana, it seems to be a three-tiered process. So you have the Ministry of Public Works at one level, and then you have the Transport and Harbors Department, which I understand they do maritime transport services and they oversee shoreside operations, etc. And then you have the Maritime Administration Department. That is a huge bureaucracy there. I mean, you have three different levels here. So at what point in that three-tiered system would you say that failures have occurred, and not only failures have occurred, but the glaring issues at each of these tiers?
All three. At the level of the minister, because like I've pointed out, the infrastructural development, there was absolute lack of capacity in terms of planning and execution of public infrastructure that would have resulted in the MV Barima being retired long ago, had those projects been managed properly and awarded to contractors with the capacity to execute them. So that is a ministerial, budgetary, project planning and execution failure at the level of the minister.
Okay.
The next level is MARAD, that is the regulatory agency, that failed to do its inspections of those vessels, the loading practices, etc., the licensing of the vessel and how much it could carry. The director of MARAD is telling us that it could carry, and I made notes here, 374 passengers, when the vessel has a licensed capacity of 150 passengers. And then you're telling us that the numbers could vary depending on the cargo that you're carrying. the rub in that is that there's no damn scale at the wharf or on the vessel for them to weigh what is going on. And so it's a game of average. So if they tell you that the vessel was carrying 260 tons of cargo, there is no way that they can say that definitively. When the APNU AFC was in government, they set up an inspectorate department. Every vessel that was departing Port Georgetown for the Northwest had to have an inspector. They hired and created an inspectorate department, independent of Transport and Harbors Department, etc. When the PPPC government took office in 2020, they disbanded that inspectorate and sent people home. So this is what I talk about when I say this culture of corruption that has been fostered. Everybody believes that they can take a bribe here, take a money there to do things that are against the law and jeopardize the lives of Guyanese. And the only reason that they do it is because they know that they will be allowed to get away with it, which is why I have been unequivocal in what I've been saying for the last few days. You cannot simply hold the captain and the shore people accountable. This is a failure that goes all the way up to the top. And so Edgil should resign or be removed. Minister Indar should resign or be removed, as well as the head of MARAD, the head of Transport and Harbors Department, to facilitate a full and impartial investigation into this.
And so one of the, again, as outsiders and what we are being told here, and before we get into the conversation about who has been arrested, I don't believe any charges were laid yet, which is a curiosity to me. But the question of issues of things like the age of the vessel. Now there's a school of thought, for example, that it was not so much the age of the vessel as it was just again, and you pointed out some of those things, but just a lack of a proper inspection of the vessel, for example, ensuring that that safety standards are adhered to. And so let's talk about the vessel. I mean, you know, in an interview with one of the journalists in Guyana, he articulated, yes, that the vessel might have been old, but its seaworthiness was not a question. Let's get your thoughts on that.
I would be interested in hearing which journalist you spoke to. That's what I'd be interested in here, because I will tell you that the government itself, now let's start from the top. The MV militia is 87 years old. It was built in 1939. Guyana is 60 years old as an independent nation. The vessel is older than our country.
It's older than Guyana as an independent.
Let's just put that into context.
Yeah.
Earlier this year, the government itself put out a tender for the rehabilitation of the vessel, right? To the tune of about 126 million Guyana dollars. Because, and if you read the scope of works, you will see that it involved the replacement of about 13 tons of steel, etc. Some of the works that were done, that were out for tender, could arguably make that vessel unseaworthy. So we're not using our own language. We're using the terms of the government in the tender document that they sent out, because of course a surveyor would have had to survey the ship to declare what parts needed to be repaired, etc. I'll be happy to forward those documents to you.
Please,
because the tenders were sent out and they were assessed earlier in the year, and a cabinet no objection given to proceed to bench the MV Barima. But They could not bench or decommission the MV Barima because, like I said, we have 2 new vessels and none of them can service the Port Kaituma areas because the wharves have not been completed. And in fact, we also purchased a vessel from Greece. I think it is the MV Calliope. And that vessel is currently, we procured it at a cost of US $4 million from Greece. Now that vessel is in Guyana, but guess what? It is used as a party boat for the First Lady's events.
A government vessel is used as a party boat?
Government vessel is being used as a party boat. I will send you all of the information because everything that I'm saying here is public, is public knowledge. And so the major design flaws in Port Kaituma Wharf that was uncovered as serious design issues precluded the Calliope from going in there. So they docked it in the Demerara River, and the First Lady is reputed for having galas and parties aboard this boat. So when you see I get on here and I am incensed, understand what are the circumstances that we're living here under in this country with a government that has mastered the art of propaganda, Dr. Bob. But when you come here, the reality is so much different.
Now, there were issues here, questions of passenger manifest discrepancies, and even though there is a manifest that they have people, and I'm just looking at this at a ground level now. Somebody says, okay, well, I don't have a ticket, but you all are still going to allow me to get on the boat. And so I'm trying to understand how that is allowed. What is the security infrastructure in Port Georgetown that allows a vessel to get away with that?
Non-existent. And everybody in Guyana, we have a term here, we call it run-ins. Everybody is on some kind of runnings. These are poorly paid public servants, and so they use every opportunity to collect extra money to maybe facilitate an extra load that shouldn't go on, etc. We are paying the price for that. Today, we have paid the price for that in Guyanese lives. The manifest system and the ticketing system, you can buy tickets online, in which case there is a manifest that is prepared. But you can also turn up the day of the vessel, and if there is space, you can buy a ticket, go up to the counter, buy a ticket, and you can get a stub. But that would not be on the manifest. That is printed out and generated from the online ticket purchases. What ought to happen is that there ought to be a reconciliation process, so that by the time the boat sets sail, there is a complete manifest. But you know what? People jump on the boat, they pass a little money here for the security guard to turn their back, and they jump on the boat. We've had complaints about people jumping in speedboats and joining the boat in the middle of the river. So it's lawlessness. It's a complete breakdown of law and order. And like I said, this is the clearest indicator that when this happens to a society, usually the poor and working class end up paying with their lives.
In fact, as you referenced the poor and working class, one of the groups one of the civil society groups that have issued a statement on this is the Amerindian People's Association of Guyana, and they say this. They say for too long, the safety of those who depend on Guyana's air, waterways, and roads has not received the level of attention, urgency, and care it deserves. Minister Edgell's report that a manifest did not match the identities of some of the rescued passengers exposes poor management and accountability in the operations of the vessels serving the Northwest District. Who oversees the operations of the vessels that they do not detect what appears to be corrupt practices in overloading? Who is responsible for the regulatory maintenance of the vessels that a seemingly unseaworthy and aged vessel is allowed to ply dangerous routes without care for the souls on board? And this is from the Amerindian People's Association. So let us talk about the Region 1 area, that indigenous area of Ghana. And we know that, I believe it takes almost 8 hours to get there. I'm subject to correction, but I believe that's what my research tells me. It's a very long trip. How much do Ghanaians really rely on maritime transport, and are there access issues to getting to some parts of the country when you need to, when in fact you can only rely on, I believe it's those two major vessels, right? There are two major vessels, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. So let us talk about those access issues there.
It's 29-hour journey.
29 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
And some parts of the journey, and the part indeed that the boat capsized, is an area called Iron Punt. Mm-hmm. And it's the roughest leg of the journey. It's in coastal waters. You're talking, this is not internal waters. You're talking about the Atlantic Ocean. Mm-hmm. It is the roughest part of the journey. And there is access by air. But of course, poor Amerindians and generally people who live in that area are not of the means to be able to purchase airline tickets to go in. And then there's small aircraft flying that route. So there's a question of capacity and how many people can move at the same time. There is, of course, another access via a place we call Charity by smaller craft. But again, the issue of cost is prohibitive. And so poor Amerindian indigenous people, they come, they sling up their hammocks in the boat and so on, and they batten down for 29 hours and they make their way to the Northwest region. The thing about this particular trip, Dr. Bob, is that we had unusually large numbers of children on board that vessel, because it's the August holidays, as we call it here in Guyana, and a number of children who've just finished school were heading back into the interior to see family, to spend August holidays there. And so based on eyewitness accounts, and particularly the account of Mrs. Court, whose husband Kurt, a well-known, well-loved individual that managed the canteen services on board the vessel, and who has since been found and his remains have been recovered. She was on board the vessel helping him to prep the area, etc., before they left Port Georgetown. And she recalled the inordinate numbers of children that were on that vessel. And so understanding that on the first day, we had 6 to 7 survivors, 15 of which included children, but in excess of 30% of that 6 to 7 was not even on the manifest. You are left to wonder exactly how many more of our children are in the bottom of the Atlantic. And it is a painful, painful time for the people of Guyana. And I will tell you that the conduct of the PPPC government, the conduct of the Air Finale-led administration is just, it is exacerbating our pain, because for the longest while, the last few days, everybody that could make a call has made a call that, look, the heads of these agencies should be asked to step down. That Juan Ejil, who is the minister directly responsible for this, and who in the first instance misled Guyanese as to exactly how many persons were on board that vessel and how much cargo it was carrying. Early in the morning, he stated emphatically, and I was present, so I'm not relaying secondhand information. I was present at the command center, where he emphatically stated, in response to a question by the media, that no, the vessel was not overloaded, that no, there was no overload in terms of passenger and cargo. And so, having lied to the people of Guyana in the first instance, is still at press conferences, is still front and center. It is almost as if they are rubbing him in the face of Guyanese. And then you have them locking out journalists from certain, from interviewing survivors. You have them throwing journalists out of briefings, etc. Last night, you had them arresting women activists who were at the vigil and just quietly holding signs that asking for the minister to be resigned, to resign or be recalled. So there's all of this happening, and the government continues to be just insensitive to the hurt and the pain of the people of Guyana. President Irfaan Ali has taken no definitive action. One would have thought that as the president of this country, he would have immediately asked that the ministers responsible for the agencies step back temporarily, even if he ought to have called them to hand in their resignation in the first place. But even if he does not do that, step back from this. Ask that the heads of the agencies responsible, Transport and Harbors Department and the Maritime Administration, excuse themselves from this investigation. None of that has been done. And so there's a lot of pomp and ceremony and vigils and optics. And we are angry because this is not the first time. It's not the second time. It's not the third time that Guyana has been besieged by such a tragedy under this PPPC government. And they have promised no stone left unturned and free and impartial investigations, and none of that have been delivered. And you know what? Our indigenous brothers and sisters continue to pay the price. You will recall that we lost 20 girls in a fire in a dorm in Madja. Do you know how that government handled this? They had an attorney at law that they gave to the people. That attorney at law procured from those persons a settlement of 5 million Guyana dollars, which is, I'll say, about 25,000 US thereabout, to relinquish all of their rights against the state for $25,000. That young lawyer is now a minister of the government in this administration. And so, no, we do not trust them to be able to investigate this properly and impartially. We have no trust in them. And so we have called for them to ask the US authorities to send in the NTSB to have, for example, Transport Canada that investigates these types of accidents to come in here. The other issue that we have had, Dr. Bob, is that this government has not yet declared a safety investigation. They have not declared a safety investigation, and Guyana is obligated to conduct such an investigation because we are signatories to the International Maritime Organization, and we are bound by signatures, by us being a signatory to the Safety of Life at Sea Convention, to carry out a marine casualty investigation. That has not been even attempted by this government. So you know what is happening? Whilst the authorities are focusing on the recovery operation, evidence is disappearing, evidence is being compromised, because had we triggered the mechanism the way we ought to have triggered it, it would have meant already that safety investigation would have been triggered. Those investigators would have gone in, secured documentation, secured all of the records that they needed to secure. None of that has been done. But instead, the public has been told, oh, the captain had cannabis in his blood.
Yeah, I had a question about that because, again, as of the time of the recording of this conversation, I do not know that any charges have been formally laid on the captain, but there are also other people on that chain of command as well. I know you've articulated the view that it seems as though the government is only going after, I suppose, the frontline functionaries, as opposed to going after, colloquially, as we say, the big fish at the top. Let's get your perspective on this. Should criminal liability also extend to those at the upper echelons of the food chain?
Absolutely. 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 Now, what is interesting is that we have not been able to hear from the captain. We don't know if he has retained attorney. What we know is that they have him in custody somewhere in the northwest region. So we don't know what their fates are. Of course, you hear all kinds of allegations that they're being beaten and all of that. We've not been able to substantiate that. We don't know who their lawyers are, whether they've been able to retain attorneys at law. But what I am aware of, because I was on the ground on Sunday, and the first or second engineer that they have in custody, his family complained that he said to them on Friday that he did not want to go on this vessel because it was not seaworthy. We are aware as well that a particular captain made several complaints directly to the minister. Instead of actioning it, they victimized him and transferred him. And we are aware as well that it had gotten to the point of frustration because captains began to absent themselves from work or call in sick whenever they had to operate that particular vessel. But politically, a commitment was made to the people of Region 1 that the ferry would travel at least once a week. And so, irrespective of the level of safety, the people had to go. And so I will resist forcefully any attempt to have the blame for this laid at the feet of the frontline staff. This is a systemic failure, and all of those persons who have a causal connection to this must be sanctioned.
And finally, where do we go from here? I mean, I know that the country is in mourning now. The 3 days have been declared of national mourning. Have you been able to speak to the survivors or families of the bereaved? And what I know that it's very heavy. I mean, you know, especially the toll for children. And this is not to discount the others who have lost their lives. Grandmothers probably lost their lives, you know, as well, because some of them are going home with their grandchildren, you know. And so this must be a very difficult time. What support you as an MP and others in civil society are giving to those families by way of psychosocial, spiritual, emotional support that would be needed? I mean, this is such a traumatic event. I mean, I just think about, for example, waiting. We have a sister island in Grenada called Carriacou and Petit Martin, two sister islands. Mm-hmm. There's a ferry that goes between Grenada and those islands. Imagine waiting at Port Hillsborough, in the case of Grenada, to receive your families for vacation and whatnot. You know, you're having these reunions, and then only to hear that this incident happened, and not knowing, you know, especially at that time of night when it occurred, not knowing the circumstances, and then hearing that this is a full-blown tragedy. I suspect this has to be traumatic.
It is an exceedingly traumatic time. And you know why I have such contempt for this government? Because you've declared 3 days of mourning, but you're proceeding with cricket party tonight for CPL. So there's not a care really that we are a people who are going through such severe trauma. I started off by telling you there is nobody here that is untouched by this. I mean, personally, from 6 o'clock on Sunday morning, I was at the Umanayana command center, Dr. Bob. And as families come in, you know, you're trying to comfort them and keep them optimistic. Dr. Bob, every family, at least 10, 20 families that I met there that day, their loved ones did not come back home. And it is, words really can't describe just the level of pain, because you're sitting there waiting with them, you're hoping. Our pain can't exceed theirs. But if this is the pain that we are in, then you can imagine them. I know one lady, Miss Boville, that I knew for many, many years. she lost her son, Warrant Officer Jason Khan, when that helicopter crashed. I don't know if you recall a helicopter crash.
I remember that helicopter crashing, yes.
She lost her, I think it is her sister's husband, because they had come to the coast to take back a sister who had died. And so there are 8 family members and the corpse aboard that vessel, and all of them are dead. And so the grief is unimaginable. We are a traumatized people, and we are saddled with a government that has no clue about how you deal with a traumatized population. People are not being allowed space to vent. They're arresting people who are calling for Ejil's resignation. They're chasing journalists. They're engaging in all types of cover-ups, and then very unclear about how they're going to investigate this. Like I started earlier by saying, a safety investigation in accordance with the requirements of the IMO treaties that we've signed is not optional. They have not even announced that they're going in that direction. They're talking about a commission of inquiry, a commission of inquiry. A commission of inquiry is a completely different mechanism. I pointed out that there will be at least 3 investigations coming out of this. A safety investigation that will have the purpose of understanding what happened. It's not to apportion blame or liability. It is a purely safety investigation that will establish the facts and that will say, this is what happened. This is how it will never happen again. And then there's the issue of the commission of inquiry that will inquire, okay, in terms of the administrative arrangements, the institutional arrangements, what went wrong, and may result in some kind of culpability. And then there is a criminal investigation that could result in whoever having to be charged for involuntary manslaughter, if that is what happened, will be charged. But there has to be mechanisms that will establish, as it were, a common nucleus of facts that this thing will flow from. Right now, what you're seeing is a government that appears to have so much to cover up. And so they're hostile to the media. They're disrespectful to the people of Guyana. They have no care or concern. Imagine the First Lady issued a statement that was so bizarre with a photo of her well-dressed and smiling and grinning. And the public outcry was so bad that she had to pull it back. They do not have a clue as to how to deal with this. And instead of saying, look, this is a national tragedy, let us adopt a national approach to dealing with this thing. Let us call in the opposition, people with expertise. Let us call in experts that have the type of expertise that could help us to get to the bottom of this. They have circled the wagon, and they continue to circle the wagon. And Guyanese are hurting and are hurting. But I will say this, Dr. Bob, if they continue to push Guyanese, this country is going to explode.
Indeed, a very difficult and intense time for the people of Guyana. So, MP Walton, again, thank you so much for agreeing to speak with us. The circumstances are certainly very, very sad and grim. And we do extend here on the Barb Report love and light to the people of Guyana.
And we receive all of it, and we thank you. And we thank you for reaching out to us to get our perspectives. In Guyana, the opposition has no access to state media. Mm-hmm. And so outlets like yours play a very important role in getting our voices on the international stage. I will end by saying we have Parliament on Monday. Mm-hmm. And I will invite my brothers and sisters in the Caribbean region to tune in to see what the conduct of the Speaker of the National Assembly will be towards members of the opposition in light of this tragedy.
Mm-hmm. And we will be certainly watching that Parliament coverage on Monday. So thank you for giving us that heads up as well. Honorable Walton, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. Viewers and listeners, the Honorable Amanda Walton joining us from Guyana, speaking on the very unspeakable, that's the only way to describe it, really, a very unspeakable tragedy. So many Guyanese families are in mourning, and a nation is just traumatized and shell-shocked by this unspeakable tragedy that occurred last week, Saturday. And it's something that we have been paying attention to and giving attention to, because like Guyana, we also a maritime economy. We have our own vessels that go between the islands. We have many boat-faring people, seafaring people who use boats and so on to get from point A to point B, because air travel is very expensive for us in the Caribbean, and so maritime transport is an essential and vital way for people to move and for people to get vital, much needed things like medical supplies to and from, etc., etc. So this is a story that resonates in so many ways with you, with Grenadians as Caribbean people, owing to what occurred there in Guyana. So
we seek the truth.
Would you be handing your resignation to the Minister of Culture tomorrow, sir?
No, I will not.
Leader of the opposition, we have accused your government, sir, of using the Grenada Development Bank to facilitate the financing of personal loans for certain government ministers.
The other side is in no position to talk about those issues, and I will leave it there.
We discover new perspectives.
You know his leadership style, and so many are saying, why are you coming now to talk about those issues?
Now is the time to speak. You have the right to decide who will take over.
And you met with Dr. Mitchell, and perhaps you might want to confirm what that meeting was about in your response. But
Dr. Mitchell, like myself, are Grenadians.
We ask the right questions.
Why was there no report on the work done of the commission? And how is this new committee different from the commission that was initially established back in 2022? So who are these elements that are using you?
I'm disappointed in my political leader.
And why is that animating those political conversations now?
It's a very interesting question.
The Bub Reports with Dr. Kellon Bub. Thought-provoking, truthful, unbiased, and truly original reporting.
I think I was muted here, so I think now you can hear me, folks. I do apologize, I was muted there. But just as a follow-up to the previous segment here, the government of Ghana, by way of the Office of the President, reached out to the Bub Report, and they reached out with a statement announcing an international and independent commission of inquiry. According to the press release, it says, quote, consistent with an earlier commitment, President Dr. Irfan Ali has formally announced the establishment of an international commission of inquiry with wide-ranging terms of reference to conduct a thorough, independent, and transparent investigation into the MV Barima tragedy. They also released a video statement overnight, and we will go ahead and share that now.
In keeping with my commitment to establish an international and independent commission of inquiry into the circumstances surrounding the capsizing of the MV Barima and into related issues I shall tomorrow, the 26th of July 2026, announce a five-member team to constitute that commission. The commission will comprise distinguished experts and professionals with extensive knowledge and experience in relevant fields, including law, marine engineering, maritime safety, and disaster investigation. The members have been carefully selected for their independence, technical expertise, and proven ability. The Commission will determine its own procedures and method of work. The Commission will be tasked with conducting a thorough, impartial examination of this tragedy, including the circumstances leading to the capsizing and sinking of the vessel, the response efforts, and all related matters. Its work will seek to identify any shortcomings or failures, recommend appropriate accountability where warranted, and propose reforms that will strengthen the safety and reliability of Guyana's maritime transportation system. Among other matters, the Commission will examine the causes and contributing factors to the disaster, including the loading of the vessel, passenger boarding, procedures, conditions on board, the vessel's seaworthiness, maintenance history, compliance with maritime laws and safety standards, the conduct and competence of the master and crew, passenger management and life-saving arrangements, as well as the role of weather, sea conditions, and other operational factors. The Commission will also undertake a review of the search, rescue, and recovery operations, assessing the adequacy, coordination, and effectiveness of the response by all agencies and stakeholders involved. Importantly, the Commission will be empowered to determine whether any acts of negligence, misconduct, dereliction of duty, or institutional failures contributed to or caused this tragedy, and to recommend any legislative, regulatory, institutional, or operational reforms necessary to prevent a recurrence. Fellow Guyanese, as we continue to navigate this difficult period in our history, I ask for our continued prayers, our continued love, unconditional love, and support for the families, survivors, as a nation, as a people. Let us rise on this occasion together in love, unity, prayers, and faith. I thank you. Fellow Guyanese, in keeping with my commitment to establish an international
And folks, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bub Report. We thank all of you for staying with us this week. This was a very interesting week for programming here on the Bub Reports platform. We are using a new streaming system here. We're still working out some kinks with that system, but hopefully that new system would cause us to have a much more efficient workflow for our Sunday program. We're still working out some kinks on that end, but we do want to thank all of you for joining us. We want to thank as well our two guests, Mr. Mike Sylvester, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Finance in Grenada, as well as MP Amanda Walton Desir from Guyana, who also joined us as well to be part of this week's program. And so what we want to do, we were supposed to have another segment on the lead up to Carnival, but all of the artists who we scheduled today, a lot of them have a set of activities happening across the island. I believe there is the Monk Morris breakfast happening. I believe that's happening up there in Monk Morris, and so some of the artists are up there. And two of the artists who were supposed to appear on the Bub Report this week, they're actually performing, I believe, at that event as well. So they would not be able to join us, but we will certainly have them next week, and as we do our Carnival countdown. So again, for those of you who are still watching, let us know where you watch from, where you're watching us from. I see Anthony DeRiggs is here as always. Anthony DeRiggs, I'm absolutely certain that this tragedy in Guyana is a reminder of the Island Queen tragedy. Well, in the case of the Island Queen, that occurred in Grenada. Well, on its way to another island, that steamer, it completely disappeared off the face of the earth. It was during the World War II period, and that was a disappearance of a steamer. There were many Grenadians on that vessel. I believe they were also going to pick passengers up in St. Vincent and the Grenadines as well. I can't recall the full details of the Island Queen tragedy, but this MV Barima tragedy in Guyana certainly reminds me of that tragedy that occurred in Grenada. In the case of the Grenada tragedy in the Island Queen event, and if I can look it up here, I'm going to look it up now and just take a look at the disappearance of the Island Queen. Let's see when that disappearance happened. Let's see. Right, so it vanished without, interestingly, so the Island Queen was a wooden schooner that vanished without a trace on the 5th of August, 1944. It was carrying 67 passengers and crew from Grenada to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So they did not pick up passengers in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. They were actually, it was a schooner that was going to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and that was about 82 years ago. No wreckage, bodies, or debris were ever officially found, making it one of the Caribbean's most haunting, unsolved maritime tragedies. So especially Grenadians of a certain age, they can certainly relate to what has occurred so tragically in our neighbors to the south, Guyana. Now, so back to that Island Queen story. The boat, that schooner departed Port St. George's on August 5th, 1944. It was accompanied by its mother vessel, which was the Providence Mark, and it set sail just 1 year shy of the end of World War II on the 2nd of September 1945. Now, aboard that ship was Chikra Salab, a Syrian-Lebanese captain, Syrian-Lebanese captain who was quite popular at the time, along with 67 passengers and crew, headed to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Among the passengers were students from the St. Joseph's Convent, St. George's, who were attending the St. Joseph's Convent, St. George's, and the Anglican High School. Of course, back in the day, both the convent and the high school were boarding schools. So many folks from the Windward Islands, from the other Windward Islands, would journey to Grenada and so that their children would attend the Anglican high school there. However, as fate would have it, only the passengers and crew aboard the Providence Mark were able to reach safely to their destination. There is also no trace of the vessel nor the bodies on board. Right? 75 years later, there is still no concrete evidence to indicate what transpired that day or what tragedy struck the passengers and crew to prevent the schooner from reaching St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Today, not much is spoken of that incident, nor is there any national recognition for those lives lost at sea. A historian, author, and resident tutor, former resident, now deceased, resident tutor of the University of the West Indies, Beverly Steele, has extensively researched the vessel's mysterious disappearance by interviewing the relatives and friends of those lost. Her findings led to publishing a book in 2011 entitled Grenada in Wartime, The Tragic Loss of the Island Queen and Other Memories of World War II. And so that, especially for Grenadians of a certain age, the Island Queen, the MV Barima tragedy in Grenada certainly brings back memories of that period. So we have here with us VM8034, who is watching from Edmonton, Canada. Ma'am or sir, welcome. Thanks for watching. And Anthony DeRiggs is saying yes. Yes, indeed, Dr. Bob. A woman called Aunt Edna lost 3 children. My grandfather, Hyacinth, and my grand-aunt Lucy were also lost. My brother, Chris, featured the story in a recent play. Oh, Mr. DeRiggs, I had no idea that you lost your grandfather and your grand-aunt in that vessel. Thanks for letting me know that. That's some important historic context. Thank you for sharing that information for us. So yes, this has to be a very difficult time for the people of Guyana, especially for the bereaved. And hearing just the stories coming out of this is just absolutely harrowing. Now, Guyana had a previous major maritime tragedy. Well, not a maritime tragedy, sorry. It was the Jim Jones incident. It was a rainforest tragedy, shall we say, in the Guyana rainforest with Jim Jones, where I think close to 900 people, famously or infamously drank the Kool-Aid, if you will, and they died there. But I am not sure, and again, I might be subject to correction, but I do not know that there were any Guyanese nationals involved in that, because Jim Jones and his adherents, they fled the United States because they were a certified cult, really, and they were given they were pretty much cloistered in the Guyanese rainforest there. Then we also have here Desiree Thomas, St. David's, Grenada. Informative program as well. Have a wonderful day and a productive week. Thank you, Ms. Thomas. Thank you so much. Let's see here. Lazarus is saying tragedies at sea should be thoroughly investigated so that lessons can be learned to avoid them happening again. Absolutely. Someone is asking, is there a list of names of the people that were lost on the Grenada vessel? Referencing here the Island Queen. I suspect, Mr. DeRiggs, perhaps if we read Beverly Steele's book, I believe, Grenada in Wartime. I hope it's not out of print, because I've been trying to get some of Sister Beverly Steele's work, and I believe one of her books was actually out of print. But maybe you can try and find it on one of the one of the book selling websites, or maybe at the Marisho House. If you are in Grenada, you can definitely visit Marisho House. I suspect they would have a copy of it. So a quick Google search here tells me that it is on Google Books. It's also on Walmart. Let's see here. Let's see. Google Books has one. Let's see here. Abe Books also has that Beverly Steele publication. But I suspect, Mr. DeRiggs, you can perhaps give that viewer some information on this. In terms of the survivors. Well, not the survivors, those who were lost and really disappeared at sea by way of that Island Queen tragedy. Let's see here. We also have Onika. Hello, Onika. Welcome. Always a pleasure having you here. And thanks for always being a loyal viewer every Sunday on the Bub Report. Onika, you're saying condolences to all the Guyanese community. Yes, indeed. And I suspect the folks in Grenada, the Guyanese community in Grenada, they're closely watching this story as we're doing as well. And you're in Grand Mall. There you are. You're in Grand Mall. Very well. Excellent. Okay. Somebody's saying I lost an uncle too. Was that in the Island Queen or was that in Guyana? You would let us know there. Spice Love. That is a story that needs to be, Beverly Steele has done the work, but I think, in terms of making this into a film. In fact, I'm going to get that book today. I will get Beverly Steele's book on the Island Queen today. That would make for some very interesting reading as well. Okay, folks, so this brings us to the end of this week's edition of the Bub Report. We're happy that you were able to join us for another episode of the program. You might have been hearing some audio noises in the background, and it's simply because, again, we are using a new system today, and there are still some glitches that we are, again, working through. And again, I always like a smooth production, so we will make sure that the production quality remains the same with this new system that we are using. Let's see here. Let's see. So we have some other viewers who are chiming in on the Island Queen. Let's go. The Riggs is saying the Island Queen story is also in Beverly Steele's book, Grenada, A History of Its People, which is out of print. Now, I know that one of Beverly Steele's books is in fact out of print, and it would be this one, A Grenada, A History of Its People. There is somebody here in Maryland who has a copy. Full disclosure, I tried to borrow it from them, but they're not parting with it until they're done reading it. So hopefully that would be some of my summer reading in the downtime that I have from my academic endeavors. And then we have Ronnie Slinger saying, my mom was on the Providence Mark. That was the mothership, if you will. Years later, she lost her brother on the Lady Kelvin. And 20 years later, her nephew Bernard lost her brother's son on the Piccadilly. So those are all shipping tragedies there. Very interesting. Thank you, Mr. Slinger, for chiming in on this question. I never knew that there was, were these also Grenadian ships? I've never heard of this one. You're saying here, the name of the ship here is the Lady Kelvin and the Piccadilly. Were those Grenadian ships? Please educate us on this. I think that would be very interesting context for us to appreciate and understand. Leonora Isaac is saying, a very educational program today. I learned about things that I never heard of before. So, Miss Isaac, certainly thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of the Bub Report as well. Okay, yes, so Mr. Slinger, I will definitely be looking into those tragedies, There was also, many years ago, that might have been in the early 90s. It would have been in the early 90s. There was a vessel called the Edna David. The Edna David, that ship also was plying the Grenada-Trinidad route. That ship, I believe it sunk, but I believe most of the passengers were rescued. Again, I'm subject to correction, but I do remember that there were some folks from Pomrose in St. David who were on that ship. I believe one of the gentlemen, who I believe either he was a captain or he had some kind of affiliation with the Edna David. I believe he was also on that ship. But I believe everyone on the Edna David in the Grenada case were rescued. And again, a lot of these schooners, a lot of these ships that we have moving between the islands, really, they perform a dual function, because these are not bona fide passenger ships, passenger vessels, right? Those vessels are created for the purpose of transporting cargo. And I think a very important conversation needs to be had about, again, the historic ways we have been moving people by way of maritime transport, between the islands, because, you know, in Grenada we call them traffickers, right? Traffickers get on the boat, go down to Trinidad. In Trinidad, there is an extremely, I think that's about a 12 to 14-hour journey from Grenada to Trinidad on those boats that ply that route. And there is also a very rough patch of water between Grenada and Trinidad called the Bocas. I personally experienced it because I did take the boat down to Trinidad one time, and I'm never doing that ever again. But I was young at the time, and you know, I decided to go with a family friend who was in the business of trafficking goods and services down to Trinidad. But I would never do that ever again. That was, and it was one of those, I think it was one of the Alexias. It might have been Alexia 2 at the time, not Alexia 3. It was one of the smaller Alexia boats. But, you know, that was, that was a harrowing experience. So I think those conversations around maritime safety in the context of ships like the MV Barima and a lot of the cargo vessels that serve a dual purpose. And I do understand that it is very affordable. You know, it's very affordable means of transport for working people, to get on a ship, because air travel is very expensive. And so that is why having a regional transportation system, a maritime transportation system, is absolutely so critical. We've been trying to get that on the road, but unfortunately, I'm not sure if we're cursed in that way, but there have been several attempts to get a regional ferry going, and it just never really panned out in any substantial ways. It's something that we really need to get our heads about. We have too much intelligent people in the Caribbean. We talk about how intelligent we are, but we can't solve those problems. We should be able to solve those problems, right? Somebody needs to come up with a brain trust to do that. Okay, so again, Janice is also chiming in. Well, before that, we have here Nicole Brendley. Welcome to this week's program again. It's important for us to know our history. I did not know about the Island Queen tragedy until Mr. DeRiggs's recent play. Yes, a lot of our history is written in books, and I dare say now hidden in books, because there is not an appetite for people to read these days. So perhaps, people like those of us who are in the academic and scholarship space and the creative arts space, we need to get in those books and find those histories and bring it alive to, to a different generation of folks. Then we have here the Piccadilly wasn't the ship that sank. It was a ship that sank outside the Trinidad waters in the 80s. Yes, indeed. There were passenger boats before. Okay, Margaret, you chiming in now. I was not even aware of this. Thank you for this education. Those passenger boats were the Federal Maple and Palm. Are those two boats or just one? Was it just called the Palm and the Federal Maple? We would love to hear your thoughts on that, Margaret. That's also good to know. Onika is saying a childhood friend lost her mom on one of the trafficking boats via Trinidad to Grenada. Yes. So I actually have it pulled up here. I'm going to try and share that screen so that we have, well, I can't share that screen from here as yet, but on the 19th of June 1971, a motor schooner called the City of St. George was on the way from Trinidad to Grenada with passengers and cargo when fire broke out in the hold. The vessel was engulfed with flames. Of the 22 passengers and crew who were drowned, 1 was from Petit Martinique and 13 were from Carriacou. Oh wow, I did not even know this. Mostly from windward. The others were from mainland Grenada. The events took place in Trinidad and Tobago's territorial waters, and the laws of Grenada did not permit an inquest into matters occurring outside of the state. Now it goes on, this article goes on to say, on the 16th of December 1972, Act 41 of 1972 was passed to declare the victims of the tragedy dead, so as to assist the surviving relatives. The only memorial to this disaster is in the Grandance Roman Catholic Church. Now, that is an excerpt from Beverly Steele's book, Grenada, A History of Its People. Very fascinating. So thank you, Onika, for bringing that to my attention. I never knew that that tragedy occurred in Grenada. Margaret is saying both the maple and the palm were donated to the region by the government of Canada. There were 2 boats, okay. So the City of St. George was the name of the boat. That was the name of the boat. City of St. George, it was a wooden-hulled cargo ship built in 1965 by McLawrence in Carriacou. And it was owned at the time by D. McFarlane from St. George's in Grenada. And Margaret is saying they traveled in opposite directions, so that when the palm was going north, the maple would be going south and vice versa. Interesting. Margaret, thanks for that history lesson today. I'm learning a lot today about, again, so it would appear as if in the context of Grenada, we have many similarities. Like, again, we can empathize with the MV Barima tragedy in Guyana, indeed. That is good information that you're bringing to our attention. Does anybody else have any schooner stories? I'm actually looking up the Edna David tragedy. I'm not seeing it here. Now that City of St. George schooner, that occurred on the 19th of June, 1971. So the boat was on its way back to Grenada from Trinidad and Tobago. I guess, we have, again, a lot of these boats that travel between the islands. So again, very, very sad time for the people of Guyana, but certainly it's a time for us to also revisit our own history of maritime tragedies in Grenada. Apparently there are many. I didn't know about the City of St. George. I knew about the Edna David and then the Island Queen, and then Mr. Slinger just chimed in on the Providence Mark, as well as the Lady Kelvin. So that's good. Anthony Wendell de Riggs, you lost relatives on the Island Queen. Your grandfather, well, not relatives, very close family, really. Your grandfather Hyacinth and your grand-aunt Lucy died on that ship. So, folks, this is where we bring to a close this week's edition of the Bub Report. So, we want to thank all of you from whatever part of the world you're watching us from, whether you're in Edmonton, Canada, whether you're in Georgetown, Guyana, whether you're in St. George's, Grenada, or usual suspects in Montreal, Toronto, folks from St. Andrews. We have Onika and Grand Mall in Grenada. We have Brenda Lee here. We have Mr. de Riggs, again, always tuning into the program. So it's always good having you here, sir. So we want to thank all of you. Again, Grenada is going into carnival season right now. So I suppose a lot of our viewers are probably now at the Mourns breakfast. Save some breakfast for me, please. So we'll see you next week, folks, for another installment of the Bub Report. And thank all of you for watching. And please remember to like and share this week's program. Take care. Have a good week ahead. Bye-bye. The stories that matter most without compromise. Hi everyone. The Bub Report is committed to being fearless, balanced, and independent, bringing you the stories that matter most without compromise. Now do us a favor. Remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell so you never miss an update. You can also watch us on GBN TV every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Catch us on WPG10 television every Sunday at 8 p.m. Your support helps us to keep journalism free from bias and influence. And together, we can make sure every voice is heard and every fact is verified. Thanks for watching.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific Section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me have a much more than diplomatic passport. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bub Report. We go there.
Hi everyone. The Bub Report is committed to being fearless, balanced,